Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, sorry about all those technical
No,
difficulties.
no problem. How are you guys doing?
Good. We're end of our day here in Shrewbury, and this is our group of teachers and students and administrators who are kind of working on putting together our short-term and long-term plans for our media center here at the high school. We're going through a lot of revamps. We just went one-to-one last year, and so we're kind of looking at a lot of different ways that schools have handled transition to being 21st century learning hubs.
Mm-hmm.
So we would love to kind of know what kind of things you guys are doing up there in Maine.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and what we did, and then I thought I would show you pictures. And since that focuses on the space, most of the opportunities we have, most of the focus we have has emerged from decisions we made in the space or vice versa. So I thought it'd be a good focal point.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to talk fast and nonstop, so do not hesitate to pull me up. Pardon me, no question.
Yeah.
So I'm Jonathan. I am a library and instructional technology specialist at the Cape Elizabeth Middle School Library and Learning Commons in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, which makes my business card about that big. On Twitter, my handle is Maine School Tech, all one word. And I'm happy to connect there, but I'm also the president of the ISTE Librarians Network. So I have some awesome opportunities to network with people all over the country. If you're not familiar, we've really taken a turn, sounds like I'm about to say for the worst. We've taken a focus on the Future Ready Librarians campaign. I had the opportunity in December to go to the White House and talk to them about sort of the subset of Future Ready relating to librarians. And if you look at the Future Ready website or search either Future Ready Librarians or Future Ready Libs as a hashtag, you'll see some great information. And Shannon Miller and some other folks did a really great webinar on the 14th, Valentine's Day, and they're going to do them every 2 months. So I'd recommend that to you as a possible resource. You don't have to be a Future Ready district or school to get some guidance about how to think about 21st century teaching and learning in a modern space and with a modern program. So I would just, as a general resource, it's not mine, it's out of the Office of Educational Technology from the Department of Education, and they just have some really good resources, and they're ramping up now. Sarah Trettin, Trettin, is on the OET, Office of Educational Technology staff, and I'm happy to hook you up with her as well. She's a great resource. And they're developing, if you're at any conferences in the next 6 months or so, big conferences, check to see if there's a Future Ready librarian or a Future Ready thread. We're doing one at ISTE in San Antonio. There was just one at TCEA in Texas. There'll be one at AASL in November. So they're just, that sort of concept has been a great rallying cry for us. We were pretty consistently looking at the the Learning Commons model as our focus. And I will say that of anything we did, both the most influential and cost-effective process was the visitation. We came to 5 schools, 3 in Massachusetts. We went to 5 schools, 3 in Massachusetts, 1 in New Hampshire, and 1 here in Maine. And now we've become a destination for other people. And I think there is no reason to reinvent the wheel. And in fact, it's both inefficient and detrimental. We saved thousands of dollars and made many fewer mistakes by letting other people do that for us. So I think this kind of conversation is great, but every second you invest in this, it is so much cheaper than making the mistakes that would result. And all you're asking for from administration is release time, or in this case, a conference room, so we could do it this way. So I'll show you what I have for photos and sort of what might give you a sense of what our space is like and our focus. Whoa, that's not what I meant to have happen, sorry. If I go over here,
Yeah, I'm on the Librarians Facebook group too, and they've been sharing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, great. So are you seeing 2 boys at a table right now?
Yep. Uh-huh.
So our handle on Twitter is @Cape_LLC. We didn't really think about the fact that LLC is also a limited liability corporation. We meant it as Library and Learning Commons. We very specifically kept library in the title because we wanted to, we wanted to make sure we continued to have people feel comfortable with it as a library per se. We wanted to make a transition that was more seamless, I guess. And we weren't interested in threatening people with the new space. We wanted them to feel like it was a part of their experience. So what you're looking at is the middle school. I don't have photos, but I'd be happy to talk again from inside the high school space. We did the same thing this past summer, but everything you see here, until this year, I served half-time in the high school and half-time in the middle school, with which I had a love-hate relationship because I was constantly bifurcated, but I was also getting a sense of our 5-12 experience. Our middle school is grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. So what you're looking at is the middle school, but it's very similar now in the high school space. And our biggest commitment was to everything being mobile except what's attached to the walls. So every single thing you see that's not one of those maroon bookcases with the tan sides will move so that the space can be used for anything. And that came out of visiting many spaces that regretted having fixed furniture, but also redefining the space. And in our case, it's been a karate studio, it's been a CPR training room, it's been a big party and public event space, and we talk about being a community space as much as it is a school space. So these wall units were repurposed from existing shelves, but the low rolling bookshelves we bought, and the goal was to also make really easy sight lines. Many of our students are small, as you can imagine, and so being able to see them all over the space from any vantage point has been really valuable. And we also genreified our collection. I don't feel as strongly about this in the high school context because there are a lot of reasons not to, in terms of especially nonfiction, but we genreified the entire collection in the middle school during the process of packing up, meaning that you can find all of our humor books together, all of our animals, all of our fantasy books, and in the case of this particular picture, animals, fantasy, and animals, fiction, and nonfiction are together, and where it's applicable, fiction, nonfiction, and biography, like sports, are all together. And we really focused on being student-centered and student-accessible, and everyone from the really outgoing, Mr. Warner, I have a question, to the kid who would like to slip in and out, we're trying to serve. So we have self-checkout using the Overdrive app. We really make as many different access points as we can to the collection and to ourselves and to people's sense that the space doesn't have a single definition, but really it's like my one student came in right at the beginning, and it's like you could not invent this moment. He turned around in a slow circle and goes, "Mr. Werner, it's like we have our very own room of requirement from Harry Potter, and the room can do whatever we want." And I was like wiping away a little tear with excitement that that's how he saw it. We have comfortable seating all over the place, again, to welcome people. We have gotten rid of these ottomans because they roll, and middle schoolers apparently cannot handle rolling things. There's a certain Superman quality where you lie on top of it and push yourself around that we did not welcome. But these are from a hotel overstock place they were renovating. So as a result, they are compliant with California code for fire resistance, whatever, that obviously you have to have, and they were $50 a piece. So instead of getting one chair, we got 12 for $600. And that kind of economy occurred to me in general, but in this particular case, it was my wife who was the queen of Craigslist, and she's like, "Wait a minute, couldn't you do this?" And it happens that our school colors are maroon and gold, so people are like, "I can't believe you got these perfect chairs." And I do tell the secret, but it was gratifying for a little while for people to be like, "This is amazing. Where'd you get them?" So those have been a great addition, and people really snuggle into them. And this is a very typical look, even though the space is often kind of active and noisy, and we welcome that. Our hashtag for SC Librarians Network this year is #Can'tShushThis. And the goal has really been around both not shushing librarians, but also not thinking of yourself as a shushing space. And Jennifer Lagarde refers to that as the process of killing zombie librarians, that we need to redefine our role as librarians and really tell the story of what we actually do, especially on social media. So that's been a really powerful experience for us to rethink and help others in the school, especially faculty who've been there for a longer period of time, reimagine what we do in the space. All of our tables are really easy to reconfigure and move around. They're very lightweight, as are the chairs, which stack. I will say the one, if I have to say a major mistake, it wasn't really all that major because it was easy to fix. This leg and this leg, which is behind this boy, were so close together that you couldn't get a chair underneath. Oh no, sorry, this leg and that leg over there. And so each of these tables only sat one person when they arrived. So my friend Chris and I flipped every table upside down, took our power tools and unscrewed 2 legs and moved them 6 inches closer to the corner of each table. And had I had my wherewithals, I would have ordered 1 table and 1 chair and seen what happened. But it was a pretty easy fix. But that was the kind of thing that by and large we avoided by seeing what other people had done instead of just going rogue and doing it ourselves. And we chose all the same tables and all the same chairs so that they're completely interchangeable. And I'll show you in a minute, but it was suggested by students, and we really worked hard to get student input. And in my favorite aspect of that, we had a math class undertake the process of mapping the space, and you'll see the map in a minute. But their input, for them to walk in and feel like they saw what they envisioned in the space, was invaluable in terms of their buy-in and feeling like it was not Amanda, my colleague, and my library, but our library as a school and as a community. We have lookup stations. We're one-to-one as well, but oftentimes kids will come without their device. So we have 4 lookup stations that are also doubled as desktop computers for things like iMovie. We do some green screening and video work on them because it's much easier or possible on the desktops. And so those are spread throughout, even though the collection's on their one-to-one device as well. I mean, the Destiny app. In this instance, it's nice to have it sort of feel more like a traditional library and to be able to look around and find, that's Destiny's app up there in the background. We work really hard. I love this word, and we'll talk more about it, but affording, meaning opportunities are provided on purpose by what we did. And one of the biggest ones is collaboration. The Partnership for 21st Century Education calls it the 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And everything we have done in this space really echoes our effort to switch from a consumption-based educational model to a creation-based one. And so whatever we have in the space, and also in a very large maker space that we have down the hall, we repurposed an old wood shop into a makerspace, and it has been phenomenal to really get people rethinking away from, absorption towards creation as their norm. So this idea of the collaborative space has been a major focus for us. So now I'll take a deep breath. Like I said, it's hard to shut me up. You can't shush this either. Can I take any questions at this moment?
So you were talking about funding. You got grant funding and got the community involved in this?
We did. We have, Cape Elizabeth is already a very fortunate, well-off town, probably like Lexington or Concord. I used to live in Winchester, pretty similar to those districts. So we had some great funding, and as an example, in terms of an embarrassment of riches, we have 2,100 students in our district and 2 trained librarians in each building. And people are like, what? I'm fighting for my 1. So I know I have a ridiculously fantastic situation. But this position combines intentionally what you might think of as a tech integrator. We don't have a tech integrator. So we have 2 LITs, Library Instructional Technology Specialists. And our position was created at the same time that we created the 2 Learning Commons to reimagine that librarians didn't have just a curation role, but also a creation role and a digital literacy role. So we do everything from digital citizenship lessons to information literacy sessions. There's been some stuff going on in the country right now that's made for good, alternative facts, reliability lessons happening. You might have heard about it. Yeah. So that has been incredibly powerful to have a space and a faculty, as it were, devoted to that conversation. So we received the largest grant in the history of the Cape Elizabeth Education Foundation, which was just under $25,000 to do this renovation. And with the exception of the carpet and the paint, it paid for the whole thing because so much was repurposed. Really what we bought were those rolling shelves, and you'll see the whole space in a minute, the rolling shelves, and we had built a few small pieces and then the purchase of the tables and chairs. So we were able to do it within that budget and have it be completely transformed in a way that I think really surprised people. And the kind of gasps when people came in September of 2014 were so gratifying, because Amanda and I had worked our backsides off that whole summer to pack and pack and unpack everything. And so for people to feel like it had paid off, and the Cape Elizabeth Education Foundation has moved its monthly meetings to our space to continue to sort of celebrate their support and the outcome of really transforming our teaching and learning model. So we felt really, really good about that, that support. You're looking at the sports section here where I said we have the combination. So you're looking at fiction there, actually backwards, nonfiction there. Oh, this is before we moved it. Sports is over there with the basketball, Werner. This is nonfiction, this is fiction, and then right here on a rolling shelf is biography. So we have those together on purpose to sort of send that message about the genre being the most important, especially to a middle school student. The high school has genreified fiction, but in terms of digitizing the collection, on the advice of Concord Carlisle, we greatly reduced our nonfiction collection because we had books, and I'll show you a couple examples in a minute, but my favorite was Current Issues in the USSR, which really was a struggle to figure out whether or not to delete from the collection. But once we did, we replaced it with an ebook through that's accessible through Destiny, that we really think is a great model to keep your fiction in print. And that at the high school has been genreified, but the nonfiction at the high school remains Dewey Decimal organized by and large, with the exception of biography and reference. And our investment there has been almost entirely in the digital collection to expand nonfiction. We do some pretty major research projects at the high school in sophomore and junior year. And when you're pulling down, the 2017 digital edition of Current Issues in Russia, you're doing much better as a source than you are otherwise. And then we really focus on expansive databases. I believe you guys in Massachusetts have a similar model to us where we have state-funded access to a really broad range of databases, and we very heavily rely on those. And we bring out, one of our favorite examples is the print book on Turkey, and we bring it out and we're like, there are so many problems that arise from this book. If you search Turkey, you get a GIF of a gobbling turkey. We had a kid search Turkey problems and got trichinosis instead of issues like diseases. And then we had questions that one of the chapters began, Turkey has enjoyed a wonderfully stable and democratic government for the last century or whatever. And you're like, and also been totally upheaved in the last year. So that kind of thing has really made us rely on a more digitized nonfiction collection, especially for anything that changes. Obviously, Shakespeare has remained Shakespeare by and large. So we mounted, as I said, every tall shelf. We used to have these shelves that you're looking at back to back out in the middle of the floor. So we had what we referred to as the 8th grade nookie corner, which was the invisible back whole third of the space where you couldn't see what was going on, and maybe you didn't want to. And that became sort of our thumbnail sketch of what we wanted to get rid of. And we were using very little of our space. And if you look at your own space, this kind of shelf is very easy to split, and it's actually more stable when it's hitched to the wall, perhaps not surprisingly. This is cinder block. And when our staff, our amazing buildings and grounds guys and women did this, it was a really great, simple way to save money, but also to say to people, like, we don't want you hiding, we don't want you disappearing. And if you're a 5th grader, we want you, for example, to be able to reach the top shelf. I had one adorable student who is now a 7th grader. When she was in 5th grade, she was about 3'1". And I noticed, I was talking to her one day and she was like, yeah, I'm wondering about getting this book down. And I don't know, let's say it was 39 clues or whatever. And I bring it down for her. She's like, I don't really check books out from the top shelves. And I looked, and in the entire 5th grade year, though she was an avid reader, everything like A's and B's and M's and N's, she had not checked out because she was too embarrassed to ask and she couldn't reach them. So that was the kind of thing we were trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
This was our office, and like me, I'm pretty certain that none of you sit down very much during the day, or if you do, you don't do it in a private space where you close the door and meditate. So we turned ours into a green screen and video studio, and you'll see a better picture of it in a second. But that kind of sensibility, like why would we have our own private space? In addition, we have like a faculty kitchen and break room attached to the kitchen. Why did we need two? What was it that we were doing? You know, as Amanda said, like she's shopping for books in the secrecy of her back office. So this was a really great example of both sort of a mindset and a physical transformation. That's the whole thing. So I'm standing on this amazing, huge bow window that frames one side of our space, and it's just over 4,000 square feet, or 3,500 square feet, I think. It's not huge, but it has allowed us, by all this being mobile, you'll see another picture in a minute, that when you clear it out, it's a very large space, and you can get a lot of people in there. This was our grand opening back in 2014, and really focused on this lines of sight, as you can see, and the ability to, as we have figured out what different uses it's going to have, like the karate studio during a health and wellness day, to be able to just shove this all completely out of the way has been transformative. And the sort of hilarity of the karate instructor coming in and saying, you know, I have to kind of be loud. And my response was, don't worry about it, we love having you. And she was sort of taken aback and then really excited to be able to use the space in that capacity. We have done everything we can to blend the access between, or the delineation that existed between print and ebooks. So in our Destiny catalog, you can tell the difference, but both of them are equally accessible. Here's another example of a collaborative space. And as I said, at this time we were one-to-one with iPads. These have now moved to the high school, which is one-to-one, and we have laptops for 7th and 8th graders and iPads for 5th and 6th graders. But this is a very common site, minus the roly-polies, where kids have sort of pulled up together to do work. Simultaneously, something else is going on here. And we use the removable shelves to create sort of little pockets. And we have had 3 classes of 20 in there at the same time doing different things without very much difficulty, as long as we're planful about, you know, we can't be doing 3 sections of direct instruction, but one can be doing research, one can be doing quiet reading, and one can be doing small group work with no real difficulty. This has also been great. My principal had the crazy idea to move special education out of the basement where it was located, because that's a great message to send to your students. Yeah, if you could just go hide down there, that'd be great. So they distributed special education classrooms all through the building, but we also make a significant effort. This is one of our literacy specialists, Elizabeth, and she in particular sort of led the movement to have her sessions in our space to sort of make the statement that you don't have to go into a back room to have support, and we're not in any way distinguishing between your learning styles and other people's. So again, sort of as an extended metaphor for what we do in the space, this is one I really like, because Elizabeth has spearheaded this campaign to say, you know, we're not going to be making the assumption that this has to take place behind closed doors somewhere else. Why would I be offering literacy support anywhere but the library? And that's been a really nice kind of example of the way that people, once we transform the space, she transformed her expectations. This is a group of about 60, 65 7th graders listening to an author talk. We can get as many as 200 students, which is a class and a half of people. And we have about 125 students per grade into the space. And that has been phenomenal as well, because having the author talk in the library is amazing. But when he can do it in this case with everyone there without multiple sessions, he reaches more students, and also he's doing it in a space that sort of celebrates his craft. This guy in particular, Greg, his last name is escaping me at the moment, writes, has this great book about a pirate, a kid who ends up on a pirate ship, called Fish. Greg, last name starts with M. But anyway, he also writes for a science magazine. What is the really famous one? Popular Science. He writes for Popular Science. So he was talking to one group of kids about writing across the curriculum, and specifically science writing and nonfiction writing, and then another group of students about his work as a fiction writer. So that was a really cool example of a great use of his time and our resources in bringing him in, but also where he could do all of those in the space. And then he spent the last 2 periods doing writer's workshop. And so we brought the tables back in, and he had small groups all around the room. Here's the self-defense class and the teacher who was a little alarmed and then excited about using the space in this way. This is another example of a whole class coming in. So in this case, the entire 6th grade is walking in for a discussion, and they'll have whole class meetings here. I don't know if you guys have something as delightful as the cafetorium, but in our case, it is the incredibly unpleasant acoustics of the cafetorium that make people want to run screaming from it. And because of the books and the carpet and the ceiling tiles, we have great acoustics. So even without being mic'd, a teacher or a speaker can be heard very easily. And so that's been a nice transition in people's expectation that if you want a large group, you have to go to either the gym or the cafetorium. And this space affords a lot better opportunities for dialogue, but also for presentation. I'll take another gasping breath here and ask if you have questions about anything you saw.
Do you guys have any other questions?
I just have a logistics. So when did you start like the process, I guess, like how long from when you kind of were at thinking about how are we going to rearrange the space and what are we going to make it until you actually got the space the way you wanted it?
Yep. So I'll send you the docs. We have this big dossier of sort of supporting documents that I'm happy to share. But basically we did a year of research from September to June, and then a year of planning, September to June. And then in that June, we closed June 1st, and we packed up for about 15 days. And then we came back August 15th and unpacked, and we were able to open on September 15th.
Wow.
Without too much difficulty, because we had this incredible crew of parent volunteers who were so fantastic. We spent much of March, April, and May doing the genreification, physically moving books around and getting so they would be packed by genre, especially in the fiction. And that made a big difference too, because they went into the boxes by and large organized in the way we intended. So that was a piece of it as well. But that year of research, as I mentioned at the beginning, was probably, I don't know for sure, but it was certainly an enormous impact on reducing our budget and reducing our time frame, because we knew what to do. U-Haul is your best friend. They have really inexpensive boxes, and they take back whatever you don't use. And then everyone in your building loves you because you have 600 boxes to give them, and they're all like moving and, you know, moving their classrooms and stuff. And so you get really popular as well. And people are like, you still have U-Haul boxes? Why, yes, I do. I'd be happy to give them to you. So, and we didn't even put barcodes on them and loan them. We gave them away. It's pretty exciting. So I'll share that at the end. I don't want to mess up my Hangout here because I sometimes do, but I'll send the link to that. And it's like a big Google Drive folder with all these things inside it, including all the documents we did for the high school, which was a shorter time frame because we didn't need to do the visits. Carolyn, who's the high school librarian, came on all of our middle school visits. So she had seen that process, and then she piggybacked on us, and she borrowed one of our rolling shelves, 2 of our tables and 6 of our chairs to try them all out in her space, so that, you know, she could do with a local consultant most of that work. She put in a green room. Her budget was larger because her space is smaller, and she needed to knock down some walls and subdivide it a little differently. But her principal had kind of like in the rotation of budget allocations, the year that he asked her to hold off 1 year behind us, both for our sanity and for the budget. And then he was able to allocate about $30,000. And then she got $10,000 through SEAF. So her renovation, which the pictures are in this folder that I'll share, took about $40,000. But her research period, well, she did it from September to June, all the way from research to packing, and similarly did it over the summer. I would highly recommend closing June 1st and then giving people tons of warning that you're going to do that, because that became a really powerful catalyst to getting stuff done, that we had a deadline, but also we weren't being, the collection wasn't being utilized at the same time. And because we'd given so much warning, we didn't, I mean, in general, of course, our doors are always open, but for us to be able to say, I'm really sorry, but I can't help you with that right now, was a very efficient way to do it, much better than trying to do it piecemeal. And just sort of, we spent almost 6 weeks announcing it and saying, you know, please get your classes in, whatever you want us to do. We can come to your classes, but the space itself and the collection is sort of going to be static for 3 months. So here's an example of the genre. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, so I guess Emily, you said the visits were really powerful, and Emily is organized for us to go on several visits. Now that you've gone through this and went to visits, are there like questions or things like I think we know what we should be looking for, but I think like what should we be asking and what should we be looking for?
Only because I have a 3 o'clock meeting that I will say to you, I have all of our questions and the responses in the docs that I'll share. So you can go through, and I'm happy to talk more after you take a look at that. So I don't mean to put you off, but I do have all of those. And they really focused on the logistics because I knew what I wanted. We knew what we wanted for sort of the feeling of the space, but how to get that done. And as an example, this is such a silly one, but it's a really great example of what not to do versus what to do. Are you guys a Destiny school?
No, we have Alexandria. I have used Destiny. I love it though.
Okay, so I don't know if you can do this in the same way, but in Destiny, you can create a list, so you can name it whatever. So what we did was name, let's say, the list fantasy, and then we walked to the shelves and we scanned barcodes for every fantasy book, and then batch changed those spine labels and pulled the books. So the process, basically the fiction collection got smaller and smaller as it was genreified. And so each sweep got faster and faster. And by creating the list and then batch changing them, it was incredibly efficient. And then from that list, you can print out spine labels. So now all of our, and you can look at this in our Destiny catalog if you'd like, but it all begins with what it is. So all these books, we've actually added an A here, so it's STEAM, realizing that was a better designation after we did some more research. So all of these books begin with the designation STEAM before they are, before what is the regular call number. And within it, the nonfiction remains Dewey. But as an example, this goes from the zeros up a little bit into 500s and then mostly in 600s. So we didn't, though from here to here is numerical, it isn't, there are big gaps within a section where applicable. So we ended up saying like the zeros and the 600s, in fact, in our sensibility go together, as do the biographies. So they all begin with a STEAM prefix. The biography is STEAM_bio. And then within that, you can expect to find the zeros before the 600s and the 610s before the 630s, but you don't find the 500s or the 400s between those as you would at the high school.
Yeah, at the high school, I was going to genreify some of the narrative nonfiction, but leave most of the reference nonfiction in the Dewey.
And I think try one section, that's what we did.
Yeah.
So we did sports first because it was heavily used, and the circulation in 2 months doubled in the sports section, which was like, well, duh. Talk about accessibility and making it student-centered. This is our elementary students coming from across the little quad to use our space, and that has been another awesome. They have a green screen studio now because we did, but those connections, they come to our makerspace. So anything you can do, I don't know physically where those students are, but especially at least to the community that you are not. We joke that we have this gesture that I can't show you right now because we're screen sharing, but imagine that I am embracing you and we talk about, it's not my space, it is our space. And we spread wide our arms to say like, we want you here. We want external events and presentations and meetings happening so that you can see what we're doing. And again, Nikki Robertson, who's one of my idols in the library world, says, you have two choices. You tell your story, you control the narrative and you like it, or someone else tells that story and I guarantee you won't like it as well. And she gives the example of like a principal sex scandal, right? Like you don't want that story dominating your school's narrative. So why not talk about all the amazing things you're doing, and better still, throw open your doors and have people come in and see it face to face, which is another reason why we welcome visitors. This is me as the mayor of Munchkinland in 1986. And the reason is because I have this picture on my desk. So the kids are, they ask me questions about it. I have a picture of my wife and my kids, and really sort of making yourself as accessible as the space is. And going back to Jennifer Lagarde and the zombie killer, like my job is not to scare you. I am not Madame Pince-Nez from Harry Potter. I am instead, your guide, your mayor of Library City. And they love that aspect, that they can expect me to be a little goofy and a little silly with them, even though I maintain, the sort of appropriate boundaries or whatever. It is not a space where they're going to expect to be afraid of me, or as
I think we lost you right there. Uh-oh. Can you hear us? Yeah, thank you so much. Come and see me tomorrow, girls, and I'll have the field trip forms.
All right, cool. Thank you.
I have them all ready. I just have to copy it.
Maybe just fill it out and I'll get the reimbursement. So I'll visit all one. And then, even though we'll take your card again. Even though we'll take your card. Liza signs it.
Here is this. Here is this. That's the itinerary. This. And I'm gonna meet here at 7. I don't know if you want to carpool or if you
I'm just
wanna
gonna
drive
myself.
So yeah, so
Then you
I'll
would
drive
need
to
to
your
fill this
house.
out. Okay.
And then we can, because you're closer.
Here, do you want a different one that
That's
doesn't
fine.
have
So I'll
the
just drive to your
that's
house.
working on it? Because if you put that on it, they're gonna want one of these.
All right.
And Liza and I,
Very best budget.
Liza and I couldn't remember with the reimbursement because I went to a conference last year and we
Usually like
reversed it.
30 cents a month.
Right, no, in
77.
terms of when you hand the form in, like,
You have to-
they like sent it back to us. They're like, no, you're not supposed to send it yet. We're like, okay, it got all.
I
I
was-
thought it was after you go.
Yeah,
I
so
thought
it's
you
like,
had to fill, I thought you sent this with this.
we
is what
did
I
too,
read.
but I think they just send it back and say, no, it's not until after you go. So
Alright.
just FYI, like, we can end up getting all these back. So it's, you don't need this one because that's for the reimbursement. It's this one.
Oh, okay.
So I'll pay you back for it. It just, that way Liza doesn't have to sign it for you again. So you can give this back to them. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna
And then I'll just pay you, so it'll be 30 and then I'll just pay you the.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yesterday to-
Or you just don't have to pay me for any water first. If you want to do that.
No, it's the
We'll figure it out,
16th.
so.
The snow days messed me up with this trip a lot. For
Can I have
sure.
another one for the itinerary?
Huh?
I have itinerary.
Yes.
You can have that one.
I know it's kind of a rush, but I wanted to try to see as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then we still have time to,
Do you want to get,
You just get Liza to sign it.
Yeah.
lunch, like quarter
I'm gonna
lunch
bring that.
someplace? Like have it delivered here?
yeah, that's a good idea.
Like, Napoli's will deliver it here.
So we
And that
can
other
go straight
place- and the other
from
place
there
we used
back
to do-
So
here.
then you come here and
Yeah.
it's great.
And then it's all set, we can eat.
Right, just come here. So if Napoli's, if you order it, what are we going to order on Thursday?
Are we allowed to, I talked to Shauna and she wasn't sure. Can I put food on the reimbursement request?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, ask her about
I
it.
think he's back.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Hi. It seems like when you don't plug in your computer.
Yeah.
I didn't plug in my computer, ergo it died. It was pretty shocking. Sorry. But the good news is that my other meeting was canceled. So do you still have 5 minutes?
I think we're okay. I'm really glad that you're going to share that document with us. Has this, this is kind of more personally for me than for them, but has this changed how teachers collaborate with you, and what does that look like for you guys?
Like 5,000 bazillion %. We co-teach now regularly with the entire 7th grade. Sorry, my halo behind me is a little much. The entire 7th grade social studies team does a research project with us now that they had never done before. The 8th grade team, with whom we literally did not speak, like we did not have conversations with them at all, became our best buds for ELA. And then probably the most exciting one also in the 7th grade team is that they've created a project-based learning model. And we are both partnered with them, each of us with half of their class. So they did this essential question, which is, what is the impact of invasion? And it runs the gamut from science classes to ELA classes, world language classes, The entire 7th grade curriculum this year is trying this out. And Amanda has all the social studies classes. And I have all the ELA classes because I used to be an English teacher. And it has been transformative. And then the kids this year expect us to be a part of their teaching and learning. And our hope is that when they go into 8th grade, they're going to be like, where's Mr. Warner? Where's Mrs. Kazaka? And get that access. So between that and this whole fake news, alternative facts narrative, we really have found ourselves more valuable than we anticipated. And then because we're going to PBL, from the main learning results have now morphed into something called the guiding principles, which I think you guys have a version of it too. It's the, aligned with the Common Core. The writing across the curriculum piece, especially science teachers who hilariously come in and are like, I am not qualified to teach writing. I got no idea what's going on here. But who also said things like, oh, it's fine. You don't have to cite your sources. Have really begun to see us as a resource to teach how to teach, if that is a good way to say it. So they use us for PD. And that's where the databases have been invaluable, because I can say, let's skip over this whole dialogue about whether or not it's reliable or not, and let's talk instead about how to access the reliable resources that we already know have been curated and vetted. And so that has been another really great way to be able to say, we do have a role that you may not anticipate in.
I've been working huge with open source and that's been a big help, and so we'll keep on moving on.
Nice. Let me just show you one other quick thing, which is, wait, sorry.
Yep.
I'm going to do that weird going into like the tunnel of something. And then I go there. Okay. So there's just one more thing in here. That's the green screen studio again. This desk is mobile. And the reason I'm showing you this is because for the first 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks before we closed, we had anticipated having an enormous circulation desk right here. That entrance is right over there. And I sat at a little desk right here before the renovation for maybe 3 days. And the inevitable reaction was teachers and students coming around the corner and jumping backwards because they didn't anticipate seeing me there and literally blocking the doorway. Mm-hmm. And so what had intended to be this really welcoming opportunity was instead affrontive and was not our intention at all. So that meant we learned from that, again, just sort of tweaking something we had. We didn't really change the design. It was just we split it in half and twisted it. So when you come in, you walk between 2 desks. If you have a chance to go to the middle school at where's Jen Sheffer and Patrick Larkin, Burlington Middle School, they have this, their learning commons is extraordinarily beautiful.
I've heard that middle school.
Definitely a place to go, because it could be a high school space as well. But you walk in between what they think of as a genius bar and a circulation desk. And so that once we realized that the affrontive desk was not a good option, that was the one that the model we adopted. And then this is the 4 C's that I mentioned. And again, I'll share all this with you, but that's been the focus of so much of what we've done. And then this piece, which talking about affording opportunities, there's a guy named Douglas Kiang in Hawaii. And he said, if you give students the opportunity to design the space just prior to doing the work, it's like an anticipatory set. And those 2 minutes that you think of as kind of wasted time, in fact, get them into the mindset. So you say something like, today we're doing one-on-one interviews. They set up the space and they jump right into the activity instead of sort of having to settle. And so constantly kids are moving stuff around. And of course it's inconvenient at times and things are all over the place. But as a model and a sort of an unexpected but fantastic outcome is that the students engage in the learning before the formal learning happens. And that really has resulted in some cool, conversations about how space affords opportunities for learning. That's a small gathering. Again, that's opening day. But there's a signage. The music class comes frequently. Shelfies, which we love. We have a Shelfie station. But there's one more here. There. the room requirement piece. So now you see the large group in there through the panorama. And within about 10 minutes, this whole space can be cleared. And what we typically do is push everything into this nook over here to open up the space. The reason I raised that is because this door is also wide enough for our bookshelves to go through. It's like a conference room connected to us.
Yeah.
So really silly things like before you order the bookshelves, measure your doors and see if they go through each other. That has been the kind of thing we never would have thought of without a visit, but now means that we can actually, if necessary, completely empty the space with the exception of our 2 big desks out front that have to go out this double door if they're leaving. And we would never would have thought of until someone, I think it was.
Now, books are heavy. Are they like shorter shelves?
So this is one piece. This is 3 feet long and 3 feet tall.
Okay.
And by myself, I can move it very easily. Amanda and I can practically throw them. They just have really big roly-poly casters on them. And the SKU for them and the manufacturer is in the docs I'll send to you too, in case you want to look at these specific ones. And they come in like 6 colors.
That's awesome.
So those are pretty cool. And the last one is, that's the first one. This is the genreification again, but this signage, which we did by printing, I basically made wide pages documents and printed them on clear stickers at Staples. It was about $10 a sign because the piece of plexiglass that's hung on is about $1, and for about a 2 foot long sign or 2.5 feet, it's around $9 at Staples. That hilariously, going back to the introverts who access the library, they just come in and look up and they know where to go.
Yeah.
And you can already get a sense I have a rather large extroverted personality, and I can really be overwhelming to a lot of kids, and I know that. So having them be able to access it on their own has been a really kind of smart move for us in any ways that you can give kids that access. And sort of the traditional, quieter introverted kid coming to the library, how do you make him or her feel welcome, has been a pretty great mantra for us, as much as the kid who would be much more out there and wanting to engage with you more, gregariously.
I like that. That's why I like gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I will send you all that stuff in just a minute. And then, as I said, do not hesitate to be back in touch. And I'd be happy to do the same thing just for a few minutes in the library space, my own or the high schools. Maybe the high schools, because you've seen so many pictures of mine and it looks just like that. And you can get a sense of what they did, and I can walk you through the redesign. Their floor plan before and after is also in the docs I'll send you, so you can see where they were and what they went to with the transformation. But their biggest challenge is that there's only one wall of windows and the ceilings are 8 feet tall. So getting it to feel like anything other than a prison in some ways was much more challenging than for us, where we had those 20-foot ceilings and the big skylight that made it a much more, I don't know what your physical space is, but she also had to think through things like paint colors and carpet color so that it was brightened. But the biggest change for her was that she had tall shelves like we did. And when she lowered those, suddenly the light was streaming in from that wall where it had been largely obscured by the tall shelves. So she had a very visual, and you'll see some of the before and after, but an arresting visual change in the space when you walk in, even just from the difference in how bright it is.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to come talk.
And the advice and the resources. And when we have more questions and stuff, I'll contact you.
Great.
All right.
Thank you guys. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Bye.